What would you do if your daughter had not returned from an errand, posting a letter only yards away from her own front door? But she did not return, and then the chaos ensued, meant that life would never be the same for the Smith family again. Naomi Louise Smith was born in Coventry. She was born to her father Brian and her mother Catherine Smith, and they lived in Brett's Hall Estate in Nuneaton, Warwickshire. This was in the UK. It was a well-respected area with great playing fields and parks fit for the kids to play, and not as much crime as in some parts of the UK. Her father Brian worked on the taxis in the area, and Naomi attended Harts Hill School in the local area and had plenty of friends. Her parents described her as a normal teenager who was quite shy and lacked a little confidence here and there, and she was described locally as a quiet girl who liked music and gymnastics. Now, during the day of the 14th of September 1995, 15-year-old Naomi Smith had been with her best friend Emma Jones. The girls had had rehearsals for the local marching band. After the rehearsals, Naomi's friend's parents dropped her off outside their home, and she was seen walking up the driveway and waving goodbye. And once inside, her mother had been organising her catalogue orders and had asked Naomi if she could pop over to the post box and deliver a letter for her. So do you remember the days when everything was ordered from a catalogue? But now it's kind of online, but in 1995 catalogues were like a big thing. Anyway, Naomi left her home at approximately 9:45 p.m. to post this letter for the catalogue company for her mother, Catherine. And the post box was located about 200 yards from her home on the main road through the Ainsley Common area. And it was getting later and later. But where was Naomi? She was missing. Had she seen a friend on the way? Had she stopped and was talking somewhere? But by 11:15 p.m, when she failed to return home, Naomi Smith's father, Brian Smith, got in his car and went to look for her. Mr. Smith drove to the house of Naomi's best friend, Emma Jones, to see if she was there. But the last time they had seen her was after rehearsals when they dropped her off. So when she wasn't found, Emma joined the search for her friend too. And everyone got to work looking for Naomi. Some drove in their cars around the estate, whilst others walked the paths and trails around the area. At the time Naomi had left her house, she had been wearing jeans, a dark blue polo neck jumper, and an old white Aran-style jumper. And she was last seen wearing a bomber jacket kit with the words Chicago Fire Department on the front. Now, shortly before midnight, as they drove into the car park of the local recreational ground, and they got to work searching for Naomi. It was pretty dark in there, but it was her best friend Emma Jones that found Naomi's body. Naomi's body was discovered underneath the child slide of the playground. The police were called, and as they quickly arrived and cordoned off the area, they got to work to find out what happened and who was responsible. A post-mortem examination was later carried out, which revealed that she had been raped'd and assaulted, but then her throat had been cut and her body had been mutilated. The investigation was headed by Detective Superintendent Tony Bayliss of the Warwickshire Police Department. An incident room was set up at the Bedworth Police Station, and throughout Friday the 15th of September, police search teams of approximately 30 officers scoured the area around the recreational ground to search for clues. And whilst police went door to door asking questions and trying to find witnesses, early in the investigation, police focused on the witness statements from people who had seen her around the time that she'd been missing. With one witness, a motorcyclist, reported seeing Naomi standing close to the post box as if she was waiting for someone. And then a young woman who lived on the opposite side of the road to the post box stated that she'd seen Naomi post a letter and then continue walking past the box for a short distance. But after walking a few steps, she paused and then turned back towards the direction of the post box. And after passing the post box, the witness saw her pause at the entrance of an alleyway known locally as the Jitty before walking down the alleyway and out of sight. Now, this footpath led behind the houses of the Bretts Hall estate towards the recreational ground where she was later discovered. And friends said it was possible for her to reach her home that way, but it was unlikely that she would have chosen to have gone that way after dark. So maybe that's why she paused. A cyclist who had been cycling along the main road reported seeing a man running out from the jitty, and the man was described as being aged about 20 to 25, of athletic build, and had short blonde hair which looked bleached and spiky on top. Now, the initial search was hampered by poor weather, which continued for a few days after the incident. And despite a thorough search of the area, police were unable to find any kind of weapon that might have been used in the crime. Up to 50 officers were assigned to the case to take witness statements and carry door-to-door inquiries. And during the course of the investigation, bailiffs made several appeals directly to the public through news media, allowing news cameras to the incident room, and followed teams of detectives during the investigation. On Saturday, the 16th of September, police held a press conference to appeal for information. 3 or 4 youths had been seen in the area opposite the Smiths' home between 10 p.m. and 11 p.m. on the evening of that night. Police appealed for the youths to come forward, and the appeals were accompanied by offers of a reward for £10,000, which at the time was a hell of a lot of money. This was for anyone with any information that might lead to a conviction. And at the time, Naomi Smith's parents, Brian and Catherine, and the half-brother David and her best friend Emma made personal appeals for information and for witnesses to come forward. On September the 17th, with her parents' permission, the police took the unusual step to release her injuries to the public. The information was a direct appeal to someone who might be harbouring the murderer. When they realised what the perpetrator had actually done and how bad it was, maybe they would reach out. Now, Detective Superintendent Tony Bailey said, "I believe that it is right and proper to reveal the extent of Naomi's injuries so that those who may have mixed loyalties about whether to come forward with information do so." Naomi Smith's lower body had been mutilated, and the killer had left a bite mark on her left breast. During the press conference, he also mentioned that saliva had been found, and this might prove crucial in building a DNA profile. During a press conference held on the 18th of September, he did disclose that scientists were attempting to build a DNA profile from this saliva, and did not rule out a mass DNA screening if it was necessary to identify a suspect. On the evening of the 21st of September, a memorial event was held in the recreational ground close to where Naomi's body was found, and many local people had gathered and tributes were read out by the family members and friends. Naomi's funeral was then held on the 18th of December 1995, and a ceremony at the Chapel End Methodist Church. A month after the murder, in October 1995, Detective Superintendent Tony Bailey announced that a DNA profile of the killer had been obtained. This was a game changer. Although it wasn't the first time DNA evidence had been used to solve a murder, it was the first time that the Forensic Science Service had carried out a mass DNA screening. The number of DNA samples taken was closer to about 135 at the time of the murder, but the service was only recently set up, and they were looking at individuals between 20 and 25. Early on the morning of the 21st of September 1995, 5 local men were arrested on suspicion of murder in coordinated early morning raids. The men were taken to Nuneaton Police Station for questioning, and 2 of the men were later released on bail, with 36-hour extensions sought to continue questioning the 3 remaining men. All of the men were later released without charge. More than 20 addresses were raided by police, with evidence taken to be sent for laboratory testing. And on the 16th of November 1995, 4 additional arrests were made. As a result of these arrests, one of the men, a 19-year-old man called Edwin Hopkins, was charged with the murder of Naomi Smith. And on the evening of the 18th of November 1995, Hopkins was held in custody and appeared at Nuneaton Magistrates Court on November the 20th, where he spoke only to confirm his name, address and date of birth. His application for bail was refused as he was a danger to the public and he was remanded in custody. The 8 other suspects were later eliminated from the inquiry, but Hopkins, who was unemployed and lived with his parents close to the recreational ground where Naomi was found. He went to court, and the trial of Edwin Douglas began on the 22nd of January 1997, 2 years later, at Birmingham Crown Court. At the trial, Hopkins was represented by Mr. James Hunt, QC. Hopkins maintained that on the evening of the murder, he had been at his sister's house in Ainsley Common playing Trivial Pursuit. He had gone out to the off-licence on his bicycle at approximately 9:30 p.m. to buy beer and crisps, and on his way to the off-licence, which was in the same area as the post box, Hopkins reported that he had not seen anyone, he had not seen Naomi, and he had not seen anything suspicious. But Hopkins' sister Julie gave evidence for the prosecution. Despite initially corroborating Edwin's story to police and providing him with an alibi, she later revealed that Edwin had taken longer to return from the off-licence than he would have needed, and when he returned after 45 minutes, he had changed into different clothes. Apparently, Hopkins' explanation was that he tried to buy milk. He'd been stopped for having no lights on his bicycle. Now, Julie Hopkins also gave evidence regarding her brother's apparent obsession with knives, which he collected, including large hunting knives. Now, Coleman, for the prosecution, told the jury that DNA evidence found on Naomi Smith's body matched that of Edwin Hopkins' DNA, in the order of 36 million to 1. Hopkins had supplied a DNA during the mass screening, and Andrew Walker, a forensic odontologist, appeared as a witness for the prosecution and was asked to compare the bite marks found on Naomi's breast with those of Hopkins, who had lost all of his front teeth in a fall from his bicycle, and his remaining teeth had moved to close the gap. Therefore, his teeth were of an unusual profile. He told the jury that the cast of Hopkins' teeth matched exactly the bite mark on Naomi's breast. The 11-person jury took 3.25 hours to deliberate its verdict, and Edwin Hopkins was found guilty of murdering Naomi Smith, and on the 30th of January 1997 was sentenced to life imprisonment. He was convicted by a 10-1 majority verdict in sentencing to life imprisonment, and the judge made the recommendation that the minimum tariff was set at 20 years, which would keep him in prison for until at least November 2015, by the age of 39. The judge said, "You have been convicted of murdering a young, innocent schoolgirl. It was a savage murder, a sadistic murder, and you were a very dangerous young man." But Hopkins was released from prison in December 2023 after serving his sentence. 23 days after his release, he was recalled back to prison after breaking one of the strictest conditions put in place for his release. But this has not been released, so we don't know what it was that he had broken. But he is free to live his life, start afresh, move, travel, get a career, find friends. But can Naomi? No, she cannot. And that is what is wrong with our justice system in the UK, in my opinion. Why should he be allowed to move on with his life, get a career, travel, move, make friends, when Naomi cannot? My heart fully goes out to the family of Naomi Smith, her friend Emma Jones, and everyone involved in this crime. Thank you for listening, guys. Take care, and as always, I'll be back with you again soon. Bye for now.